Today it is June 5th. Welcome. If this is your first time, welcome. Probably most of you have been here before. So we start by setting our intention and aspirations by saying the Four Immeasurables prayer. May all beings have happiness, and the causes of happiness. May all beings be free from suffering, and the causes of suffering. May all beings not be separated from happiness that has never known suffering. May they rest in equanimity, free from attachment, anger, and aversion. I'm just going to close this. Much light. Yeah, that's a little better. So we're going to meditate for a bit. I have a short reading from Zanso Khyentse Rinpoche that I found very interesting that I thought I would share. I'm not going to do a full detailed review. Or maybe I should. No, we'll just do a simple one. Those of you who are really new, just try to follow along the best you can. I don't like to do detailed reviews week after week after week because so many of you are consistent with this and don't need that. But if you are new, you can go on to the website, the YouTube channel. I always forget what it's called. Nick, you let me know if you're on the chat thing here, the name of the website. And you can find the first few classes of 2002, right after the new year in January, go into a very detailed review of the basic meditation technique. Just briefly, I sit on a cushion here. It helps to have your hips either in line or a little higher than your knees. You can be cross-legged, if that's good. If you're very flexible and you do this kind of thing, or a full lotus if you're really very flexible. If you're kind of, normal, like not flexible, you can do this like I do it. Meditation with Michael Imperioli is on YouTube. And that has the reviews. So hands are just kind of, you could do this, you could do this, you could do this, you could do this. In the lap, just relaxed. Important thing is that the back be straight, not rigid at attention, but just kind of easily straight. Same with the neck. The head's a little bit tilted forward, so it's not this upright attention thing. Relax into this pose. That's important. So now we're sitting in our posture, and we should relax. We're breathing through our nose, unless you can't. Mouth is not, teeth are not tight, the teeth are a little bit loose, but the lips are closed. Breathe. Tibetan Buddhist tradition, the eyes are open, but they're not fixed, like in this penetrating gaze, and they're not spaced out, they're just relaxed, lightly resting on whatever is in front of the eyes. If you need extra oxygen, take a deep breath. Otherwise, it should be just a really relaxed rhythm of breath. you're going to become aware of thoughts. Or you will be thinking. We hope, the hope is to become aware that you are thinking. Because that's what the mind does. So we are doing this practice, working with our body, right? Which is a specific, we're in a specific posture, so we're working with the body. Keep your meditation going as I talk. Try to stay with your breath and hear me at the same time. So we're dealing with the physical, we're also dealing with the mental, which is the thoughts. And really those things aren't separated. We need to separate them to work with them in a way, but they're not really separate. When you recognize that you're thinking, go back to the breath. I'm always my mind drifts to the plans, what I'm doing later. I can also choose to look at the thought as a cloud that has arisen in this clear, limitless, spacious blue sky of mind. And that once I recognize it, if I don't entertain it, if I don't follow it, amplify it, get sucked up by it, I can leave it where it is and it'll just dissolve back into that sky. And that sky is the calm that we get from relaxing, from sitting, slowing everything down, letting the speed of our, processing, logical, filtering mind, that mind that's constantly perceiving input, taking in input, perceiving impressions, taking in input, translating it, processing it, filtering, interpreting it. We're kind of interrupting that process. Letting go of that process. And getting a glimpse of what is mind without that process. I think we confuse that process. By process, I mean the perceiving and receiving sensory input and then processing it through our memory, through our desire, through our fears, through our anxieties. And that often leads to action, sometimes positive, sometimes negative. We are not stamping our thoughts with a label of positive or negative. We're just, in this practice, we're just seeing the fact, witnessing the fact that we're thinking, witnessing our thoughts. But you have to know that you're thinking in order to do that. And once you know it, you can see the thought and leave it where it is, rather than when you're not aware of thoughts, you get pulled by them, you get captured by them, entangled with them. Back to the breath. The breath is really the anchor. You can focus on the place between the nose and upper lip where the breath is going in and out. You focus, put your attention there. Breathe. Focus on the breath. Recognize the fact that you're thinking. Leave the thought where it is. See it as a cloud. Once you see it as a cloud, you can watch it just dissipate back into the sky, back into the mind. And those of you who have been doing this for a while, you can also every so often just check in. You can do it very often if you want, if you have the awareness to. Checking in, saying, what is my mind doing? And really think about what that means. What is my mind doing? So mind is looking at mind. What is the mind that looks at mind? So there's the mind that gets distracted by something, right? By something, some kind of sensory input or memory, fear, things, right? That's mind, an aspect of it. It has arisen there. And then there's the mind that looks at that, looks at it, and can perceive it, and has awareness of it. Is a thought mind? Can the thought exist without the mind? Can a cloud exist without sky? No, right? Okay, excellent. Let me get something to read to you. So this is Zongsar Khyentse Rinpoche, who I actually read from quite often, because I think he's an amazing Tibetan Buddhist. Actually, he's Bhutanese. He's from Bhutan originally, but it's really Tibetan Buddhism that he teaches. But I think he's one of the most amazing, brilliant teachers alive and teaching. Very important. It's Dzongsar. Dzongsar. Zonsar. Khyentse. Khyentse. Rinpoche. If you go on the website, we have the teachers that we recommend and readings, and he's just really brilliant. Okay. Since phenomena are momentarily gathered conditions, both material and mental, if we gather or dispel the appropriate conditions, phenomena appear or fall apart. For instance, the phenomenon of a flower is the result of many conditions, including our ability to recognize a flower as a flower by its appearance and attributes. Someone who has never seen a flower before will have no idea what this delicate object is. Likewise, we recognize a house as a house by its appearance and attributes. When the parts of a house like walls, ceilings, floors, doors, and windows are assembled in the correct manner, then the phenomenon of a house appears. You cannot deny that. You cannot and should not deny that. But at the same time, this does not mean that a house truly exists. This learned ability to see beyond the surfaces of phenomena is so important to develop. Everything is like an optical illusion that is put together in a clever way. But even to say that phenomena are put together is somewhat of an overstatement. Phenomena are not even stitched together. You understand? Phenomena are just favorable conditions that happen to converge, and a phenomenon manifests for the time being. This constellation of factors is not even glued or stitched or bound together like the pages of a book. It's much more haphazard than that. There is a confluence of various factors that combine to temporarily appear as a phenomenon of a flower, as a phenomenon of a house, as a phenomenon of human being, and that's all. As long as there is a gatherer, and acts of gathering and conditions gathered, there will be continuous phenomena arising, dwelling, and falling in endless waves. Some people wonder whether the stream of perception stops when we reach enlightenment. No, mind or perception does not stop. According to causes and conditions, when the circumstances are appropriate, appearances will still appear. It goes on, but I'm going to stop there. And he's talking about the concept of dependent arising, which is a very important. It basically is Buddhism in a way. It's part of the view of Buddhism that everything that exists, that we perceive, nothing is an island, as they say, right? Everything is dependent on other things. He's talking about a flower. There's both the flower and there's the perceiver of the flower, right? If there's no one to perceive the flower, then that experience of beholding a flower doesn't exist, right? At the same time, the flower itself is a confluence of sun and water and earth. That cannot exist without any of those things. At the same time, a flower, as we perceive it, is not essentially what it appears to be, which is this, combination of a stalk and petals and pistil and stamen and seed, or whatever the flower's components are, because as we know through quantum physics, a flower or anything material, matter, is not as it appears really in essence, and exists either as particles, which exist as waves, which means it's basically energy. So basically saying that, these things that we give so much solidity to and so much definition to, so much credentials to, really are empty of inherent existence. It depends on so many causes and conditions and things dependent on each other for things to arise, for things to be perceived, for us to perceive things, for us to exist in the way we think we exist. Already has so many causes and conditions. And yet even when it does appear, when a person is born and a person perceives something else, these things, perceiver and the perceived, don't really exist as they appear to be anyway. And that they are impermanent. That we will, as human beings die, and then our bodies will decompose or whatever, be burned or whatever happens to us after our death. Physical objects, material objects, matter will eventually not exist. Even the universe, they say, will eventually not exist, and whatever, constantly expanding to the point where it explodes. So what do you do with this information? That's really, it's one thing to start to turn your mind towards this view, which is Buddhism. And how do you integrate that with your day-to-day life? That's a question we always talk about. And that's a very vast topic, but in one way, when we get fixated on things in our life, fears and hopes and regrets and desires and things, which in the moment sometimes can really take hold of us, and cause us pleasure, anticipation, pain, suffering, fear, anxiety, regret. suffering, you know. You can remind yourself that everything is impermanent. Everything will change. When we were talking to a friend about a fear of flying. A friend had a fear of flying, you know. And just saying, you know, trying to get over it and thinking of ways to get over it, like this, you know, trying to break it down. Why you're afraid, you know, afraid to closed in, that you don't have control over the plane, afraid that it could crash, afraid that, you know, one person is responsible or two people because they're driving the plane. Trying to get over that by saying, well, you know, millions of flights happen every year and very few of them crash and things like that. And then there's the bigger picture where you could say to yourself, whether it's now or it's tomorrow, it's a year from now or 10 years from now, 20 years, we're going to die, you know. And I'm not saying this as like this pessimistic, fatalistic kind of point of view, but remembering that everything's impermanent. In some ways can take the pressure off a little bit. You know, it's like we want to make all these plans and we will and we have to, you know, in order to live our lives. But if we can also step back at the same time and think, you know, if the causes and conditions are right, then these things will come to fruition. And even if they do come to fruition, they are temporary. And, you know, every person that is beloved to us, we will be separated from at one point, you know, at some point in our lives. Whether we go first or they go first. And in essence, you know, that can inspire us to really settle into the moment, the now, and really realize, well, how do we want to live in this moment, you know, and what is important. As Garchen Rinpoche says, the only cause of happiness is love, is really being a benefit to others, because everything else has the nature of suffering in it, right? So, like I said, if you're in love with someone, that you're going to be separated from that person. You love your children, or you love your parents, or you love your, you know, husband or wife, or partner. That clinging is not always going to last, you know. That clinging is subject to a lot of things, getting along and not getting along, and illness and fear, you know, because we will be sick, and because we're in a human form, we will get sick, we will grow old, we will, you know, pass. Being a benefit to others, you know, cultivating love and kindness and compassion and all those things. And you're doing it from this investigation, you know, this investigation of dependent arising, as we say, that everything is so interconnected that way, that we don't exist just on our own. And realizing that if that is happening, because it is happening, how to navigate it. What's the most effective way? The Buddhas and the Bodhisattvas have tremendous compassion for sentient beings, human beings among them, because they know how much we suffer because of our attachment, because of our fears and all those things. So if we can take a lesson from them, even if it's just a grain of that, and somehow bring that compassion and love into how we perceive others, how we interact with others, you know, that's certainly in harmony with this path. And these kind of things, why do we meditate, and why is this connected to? Because, how is this connected to meditation? Because without working with the mind, there's no way you are constantly engaged in just the self, the separation of self and other, which is, what's good for me, what's good for the people that I take care of, that I care about, and the meditation starts to give you a little bit of a distance and a perspective and some room, some spaciousness in the mind, where you can start to see how this view actually exists in the world, and how you can begin to look at your situation a little bit differently than you have in the past. And I do this almost every class, but I encourage all of you, if any of this makes any sense and is inspiring at all, um, to find a teacher of an authentic lineage and really become a student. You know, I'm a fellow student. I'm not a teacher. I mean, I'm just kind of telling you things that I've learned. Um, but there are great living teachers from authentic lineages that have long, unbroken lines going back to Buddha himself. Go on the website and we talk about them. I post in stories often on Instagram some of these teachers, but they're alive and they're here now. Read their books or read the books you know of the masters that have passed already, and of course of the sutras of Buddha, himself. And but making a connection to a living teacher is really probably the most powerful thing you can do as someone who's interested in these teachings. But it must be a teacher from an authentic lineage, at least in my opinion. That's my recommendation. Okay, we can answer some questions if anyone has any. I am moving to a new city across the country where I don't know anyone. Any advice on finding Sangha in a new place? I mean, Google, Google Buddhist centers. Um, you can also go to like some of the Buddhist publications like Tricycle Magazine and Lion's Roar, and often inside those magazines they have listings of Buddhist centers. But obviously, if you have a Buddhist center and a sangha in the place where you live and can go in person to teachings regularly, that's fantastic. If you find a teacher that inspires you, and you live in New York and they live in near Phoenix, which is kind of our situation, Victoria and I, and you can go a couple of times a year, that's really fantastic. If you live somewhere there's no center nearby and you don't have the time or means to travel to a teacher, through the miracle of technology, which we are using as we speak, like Zoom and these kind of YouTube and things like that, you can actually do live teachings with teachers. And some of them, and this is also very unorthodox, but as I can say, someone who does this, they actually do empowerments. Or I'm not going to get into what those are, but they're very very important, valuable, almost ceremonial type things, but they're a little bit more. They're not just surface uh, ritual. They're almost a exchange of energy, if you will. And some teachers do these, you know, like taking vows to become a Buddhist, or specific teachings that involve empowerments online through Zoom. So There are many opportunities now. So there's no excuse for not really finding a teacher. This class is very much needed today. Friday morning, my sister was stabbed and almost murdered by an ex-boyfriend who had been stalking her. Oh, that is horrible. Two of my nieces were home and had to tackle him to the ground to save my sister's life. He then turned the knife on himself. My sister will be okay. She's safe and resting, and her ex is still in critical condition. I'll be honest and say I hope he dies for what he did. I know we need to find compassion and forgiveness, but let's be real. That's not happening. I guess I need some guidance on how to process this. Well, when you say this sentence, right? You say, I'll be honest and say, I hope he dies for what he did. That's what you're feeling. That's, you're being honest about your feeling. But your next sentence, you say, I know we need to find compassion and forgiveness, but let's be real. I'm not sure what you mean by that. I know we need to find compassion and forgiveness. Because Buddhism is not a very dogmatic religion or philosophy. Buddha doesn't say, you have to do this, or you need to do this because I know the truth and I'm telling you what you should do. No, it's not that. For those who hear these teachings and are attracted to them, then you can look into them and say, this is what I want to do. This is what I want to follow. Which I assume you know what I mean, right? But I just want to be specific about that, because then we could get into this. Buddha was not a god. Buddhism is not theistic. It's not like the Ten Commandments, that God is going to punish you or Buddha is going to punish you if you don't find compassion for this guy who almost killed your sister. So, what you can know, you can look at it in terms of karma, right? When we were talking about dependent arising before and causes and condition, right? My karma has led me through almost an incalculable amount of causes and conditions to be here today talking about this horrible incident that happened Friday morning to your sister. If I didn't have the karma to be here doing that, I would not be here. Do you know what I mean? Karma is not this like God making judgment and meting out punishment and reward. That's not what it is. It's like if I plant a seed in the ground and then I leave and I leave the country. Now that seed's not going to grow unless somebody waters it and takes care of it, right? So that seed can become a plant, but unless it has the karma to have somebody take care of it, it's not going to happen. So there's two things you have to look at, and these are Buddhist views. And if as a Buddhist, I believe these things very strongly. Actually, I have complete confidence in these things: karma and the continuity of our mind, which has never been created, will never be destroyed. Mind is like space. Mind is eternal, and that when we talk about rebirth, that's what's being reborn. Michael is not being reborn, but this kind of connection to this eternal mind, this mind that is connected to all mind, right? That will go on, and that will be reborn in another form, depending on what I, at this point in my life, what I've done, what I don't do, the karma that I create, right? It's basically you're working with energy, so you're creating positive energy and negative energy. That it's more like that, like a matrix of energy that kind of goes on. It's not the soul, it's not me, it's as we're talking about dependent arising, we're talking about things being empty of inherent existence. Basically, so here's where I'm going with all this. When someone commits a really violent act, like this horrible shooting in Texas, this young boy who killed 21 people. Acts like that carry such heavy negative karma will cause immense suffering in the next life for that being. So think about that for one. I'm not saying this is going to help you. I'm just saying you should start to think about that in terms, rather than, people always think somebody does something bad and they get away with it. Just because no one catches you. So if this kid killed 21 people and got away with it, right? I mean, didn't get arrested, they couldn't find him or something, leaves the country, never gets found. That does not, in the Buddhist point of view, that does not mean this person is going to, that did not get away with it, because that person's going to suffer because of that negative karma that he's created, and suffer much worse, for many, 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 many rebirths. Now, for your sister and your nieces who have undergone suffering, so we say sometimes when we hear an innocent person has suffered, like a kid gets cancer or something like that, or someone minding their own business gets attacked for no reason, innocent person suffering. When you suffer, you or a loved one or something, you can think at least whatever negative karma they had created in the past lives even, the suffering kind of is paying off that karmic debt. So, almost like there's a silver lining to suffering in a way. I mean, that's a difficult pill to swallow in many, many situations, but that's what you're saying. When you go through really unbearable suffering, you're clearing off some very heavy negative karma. That's a Buddhist point of view. So those are ways for you to process it, in my point of view. Don't be so hard on yourself if you can't find compassion and forgiveness for that person at this point. But what you can do is think about the karma that person has created. I hope that helps you. Thanks for sharing this reading. I've been thinking a lot about the concept of mutual arising, or dependent arising, as they really say in Buddhism, and inherent emptiness. And first, it felt quite overwhelming. I agree. But the more I reflect on these concepts, I found great comfort, particularly during some current health and professional challenges. It's like you said, it can actually take the pressure off and enable us to step back and accept things as they are. Very thought-provoking. Yeah. Yeah. I agree. Thank you for sharing that. Do you ever think about being a teacher in the future? In a future life, maybe. I don't know. I don't know. This started because I was on Instagram posting about Buddhism, which when I got on Instagram, I thought I would turn people on to stuff that I like, and if like artists and music and books and things like that, and movies and Buddhism. And people asked me about meditation. People would write to me and say, how do I meditate? It was during the pandemic and people were very stressed out. And I would start to DM people back meditation instructions. It started happening a lot. So I figured maybe I'll just make a video. I was going to make a video, then I was going to make an Instagram live, and then it turned into this. Because, in a way you feel like, if people are, if you can give something like this to people, I think it's important to do that. It's also helped me a lot in my practice because I've had to really be clear about, to be able to explain certain things. I've had to really be clear about what it is that I'm explaining. So I don't know. I don't really think about being a teacher in the future. There's great teachers who have dedicated their entire lives to this. They've dedicated many lifetimes to this, and those are the people you should be students of. Did the disruption of the pandemic affect your meditation practice, either positively or negatively? Well, that kind of connects to just what I said. The disruption of the pandemic kind of gave birth to this class, which it did affect my practice. It kind of made it stronger in some ways, doing it with you. I find that while I had time to meditate, it's harder to get my mind to settle. Yeah, you're going to go through, and not just the pandemic, but listen, there's times when you're just really in the grips of suffering and in the grips of anxiety and fear, and it's hard to get the mind to settle. It's like sometimes those of you who exercise regularly, there's some mornings you wake up, you feel energetic, you go to that gym or you go start your exercise, and you can, and there's other, you don't get enough sleep, you didn't eat right, maybe you drank or something, and you drag yourself to that gym, and it's just harder to do the workout as strongly or as limberly or whatever that word is, loosely, and you know what I mean? It's the same thing in a way. But with consistent practice and effort, you know, things happen. Have you experienced Reiki? I've had my first session. My chakras are more aligned. I don't know anything about Reiki. And I also don't know how it applies to Buddhism. I don't know if it does. But if it's good for you and it makes you happy and it calms you down, that's really good. Meditation as an aspect of Buddhism is not just to calm us down. No. It's to start to really understand the truth of the way things are. And then um, starting to tap into some of that truth really kind of figure out how, we want to live within that, what decisions we want to make, what we want to do as people. It's not just about Zansa Khyentse Rinpoche, the teacher that I wrote a book called Not for Happiness, which really addresses this, exactly what I'm saying. He says in the book, maybe right at the beginning, that if you're meditating just to kind of feel better, you're better off getting like a massage. He's not being facetious, because meditation, there's many forms of meditation, but we're talking about meditation in a Buddhist context, is not just for that. But like I said, you know, um, we're not just there's, when we're sick, we go to the doctor. So I like getting massages. I find them really, I like how my body feels after it. It gets rid of certain tension. I'm not saying this is bad or anything like that. So, we do lots of things for our physical and mental well-being. So if it's good, then do it. In 2 days, I embark on a 1,200-mile hike that should last most of the summer. I will try to meditate every Sunday with this group. I picture meditating under a tree, just as Buddha would. I believe this class has prepared me well, and I will continue on the path to enlightenment with each step as best I can. Fantastic. Well, good luck. 1,200 miles is a long hike. I commend you for taking on such something so challenging. I'm sure it's going to be amazing. Thank you so much for doing these classes. I have a question about the Buddhist view of abortion. I'm not going to go even further than that because I don't know if there is a Buddhist view on abortion. And more importantly, and this is what I say, even if there is a view on abortion, it's like Buddhism, like I said before, was not about Buddha saying this is what all of you should do. I am never going to have to get an abortion, right, in this lifetime. Now, I may agree with, I may think abortion is not good because, you know, I may consider a fetus a life, and having an abortion is destroying that life. I may think abortion is a completely acceptable, although difficult thing, because the fetus is not an individual yet and is completely dependent on the mother, and that the mother should make that decision. All right. So I may take either of those two things, but just because I feel this way or that does not mean that I think everybody should. Right. The problem I have with the argument of abortion in this country is that you know, whatever your religious beliefs are, why does that mean everybody? Because not all of us have very different religious beliefs. There's not just one religion, and we're talking about America where I live. There's not just one religion. Some people don't have any religion. Some people are atheists. Some people are whatever. So why should somebody's religious belief dictate the law? Going back to Buddhism. Then when I read Buddhist philosophy, well, I'm not sure what you read or what philosophy or who, you know. I mean, I don't think there's anything in the sutras, Buddhist writing, about abortion. So, it's not like the Catholic Church that has ruled on this or that. And there's no authority in Buddhism that would rule this way or that. You know, my authority is not, even though I'm a Tibetan Buddhist, is not the Dalai Lama, who is, you know, the Dalai Lama is an interesting example because the Dalai Lama was not only he was really the leader of the Gelugpa division of Tibetan Buddhism, but also in charge of the country, going back for centuries, you know. So it's a very specific thing. My authority is my teacher. And in Tibetan Buddhism, although they, you know, all the lamas and all the lineages respect the Dalai Lama greatly, the individual lineages really have more, really take their cues from the lineage itself. So my teacher, Garchen Rinpoche, is my authority. And his lamas who taught him and things like that. Although it's not like the Dalai Lama is going to come out with an edict and saying, Tibetan Buddhism now thinks abortion is wrong or right. It's really not about that. I think what the important thing is that the individual has to make that decision. In that sense, I think that is consistent with Buddhism. If that individual is making a decision, you know, not just thinking of oneself, but thinking of others, thinking of the other people involved, thinking of the baby that may be alive, that may be born or not be born, and what kind of life it's going to have, and what kind of life you're going to be. You know, also thinking of yourself as well, but not just that. Taking all these things into consideration. So, like I said, whether or not, if I was a woman and I was going to decide to get an abortion, I don't know. I don't have to face that. But I respect a woman's right to choose and think they should have legal and safe, ways of doing that. I don't find that to be in conflict with Buddhism. You know, Buddha never even said if you should eat. I don't think Buddha has made was a vegetarian or not a vegetarian. You know, a lot of Tibetan Buddhists are not vegetarian, and um, I think it's good to stop thinking of Buddhism in terms of other religions and how it's like Buddha said this and this is what we must do. It's going back to the other question about him saying, "I know I should be compassionate." Well, not you're not saying you should be compassionate. Do you? You know. I don't know if this is clear. You know, but that's my that's my 2 cents. Are we at our attention or the thing that directs our attention? Both, I guess. This was very thought provoking and really enjoyed this session. What made you seek out Buddhism? I started getting into Buddhism in 2007. I started seeking it out because I a dissatisfaction with a lot of things, very good things that had happened in my life, yet there's something still felt needed to be addressed. You know, probably the same reason why you're here. I was wondering what the commonly held belief is amongst Tibetans and Buddhists. In the cycle of reincarnation, is it more likely that moving up and down the karmic cycle moves us into another dimension, reality, or would the energy pool continue on Earth to come back as something else on Earth? That's a really good question. Um, I think, in Buddhism, they believe in many different kind of world systems. So it's possible, um, you know, to be born in one of those. And I don't really know the details on those things. I've been struggling with depression and anxiety. I cried sometimes during this meditation because of one of the thoughts that passes. Is this okay? The emotion went away, but I don't know if it's. Um, Again, is this okay? It is. It just is. It is what it is. There's no pass fail here. You know what I mean? Emotions came up. If you're dealing with anxiety and depression, um, if that's something very serious, I always encourage people to get professional help for those things. I think it's really important. And meditation sometimes can open those things and kind of bring them to the forefront in a way that, you need professional help to get through. Um, so keep that in mind. And yeah, I mean, it's you don't have to ask if it's okay. It just is. It is what it is. Have you considered going vegan? Um, yeah, I'm a vegetarian, but it's more about because of the killing. I don't like the killing. But like I said, a lot of Tibetans are. Tibetan culture is mostly meat eaters. They have very limited options in food in Tibet, because of the terrain, climate, and stuff. So, again, we're talking about. But I think vegetarianism is good. I do. I like it. And to the person who asked about abortion, I would like to remind you how much you've talked about intention in Buddhism. Oh yeah, that's really good. I should have said that. That's what I was trying to say. You know, when you're making that decision, your intention isn't something, you know. And I think most women, you know, when they go to make this decision, you know, they're going to consider this with a lot of weight. You know, it's a very important one and not an easy one. And someone who decides to have an abortion, you know, I'm sure, you know, for the most part, has weighed all these, you know, repercussions and, you know, we have to remember that whether or not it's legal, people are going to get abortions. That's the problem, you know, throughout history. So to make it illegal means making it not safe. So you're going to go to places that are not, maybe, you know what I mean? That are not licensed, which means maybe they're not as regulated or as, you know, held to certain standards. That's the danger in those things. Um, yes, thank you for reminding me of that. Can you briefly speak on merit? At the end of class, we dedicate merit. Because when you engage in things that are positive, you know, and really when they're positive and they help others, you know, you gain something they call something called merit, which basically is good karma. You know what I mean? Kind of cultivating, generating good karmic energy. So if you, in this lifetime, have the good fortune of being a student of a you know, authentic Buddhist teacher, Lama, that means in this life or prior ones you have gained, you know, you have uh, accumulated enough good karma through actions to have merit, the merit that allows you, that allows us the causes and conditions to arise that can bring you to a teacher and become a student. Does that make sense? But merit, we dedicate the merit because it's almost like what you're doing is, so when we do this class, whatever merit we do, because as a group we're kind of helping each other practice, work with our mind, you know what I mean, create good karma and stuff like that. And by dedicating that merit to the benefit of all beings, it's like we're taking, you know, it's like taking a drop of water and putting it into the ocean. So now this drop of water is not just alone, becomes the ocean. That's kind of what we're doing. Because merit can be exhausted. So you can, because of prior lifetimes, good karma, you can find yourself, you know, they say things like, you know, if you're wealthy, right, if you're rich, that's the result of good karma, right, coming together. But that you've acquired merit enough to have these good, you know, comfortable situations. But if you don't kind of take it to the next level per se, or like keep, you know, the creating more good karma, you exhaust that merit, and in this lifetime or the next, you may be, you know, impoverished or something. That said, let's dedicate the merit of today's class for the benefit of all beings. By this merit, may all beings attain the state of enlightenment and conquer the enemies of false and delusions. Think about that. So, by this merit, whatever merit we've created today as a group, trying to set our intentions, do something positive like this, right? Through this merit, we're taking this drop of water, putting it into the ocean. By this merit, may all beings attain the state of enlightenment and conquer the enemies of faults and delusions. We're not talking about conquering the enemies of evil people, the enemies who are evil people. We're saying conquer the enemies of faults and delusions. Delusions meaning not knowing the truth about like dependent arising, interdependence, impermanence, emptiness of inherent existence, dependent arising. Not knowing that is the enemy. May they be meaning may they meaning all beings. May all beings be liberated from this ocean of samsara, because samsara is a constant wheel of suffering in way, pounding waves of birth, old age, sickness, and death. So say it once again, now that we've kind of gone into it a little bit. By this merit, may all beings attain the state of enlightenment and conquer the enemies of faults and delusions. May they be liberated from this ocean of samsara and its pounding waves of birth, old age, sickness, and death. Samsaric existence is always subject to birth, old age, sickness, and death. Liberation means enlightenment. Liberation means becoming Buddha, Bodhisattva, Buddha mind, which is already inherently in us. It's basically purifying the mind to conquer the enemies of faults and delusions. Once we conquer the enemies of faults and delusions, it's almost like that shell gets cracked and the Buddha that's within kind of becomes us. We become it. See you next week. Thank you, Nick.